Hi, everyone. Hi there. Hello, 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 hello. Let's see if this works. Yes, one, two, three, four. Hello, hi there. This is who I am, Cliff Bates. Welcome once again to a Friday live stream. I'm fine. This week I'm able to do a live stream, even though I'm not in my office, or I'm kind of in a in between stage this week because of commitments and traveling and things. I didn't want to do another like pre-recorded thing, um, but I could have honestly, given the state of things and craziness. I'm alive. We're here. I want to say hello to everyone who's been coming to the live streams. I mean, if only after they've happened, because we're doing it basically 5 p.m. in Eastern Europe, Central European time, but 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is for people on the West Coast. It's like maybe like 8, 9 in the morning. So good morning to the West Coast people that are doing it. Good morning. Good morning, and East Coasters. And good afternoon, and to those of us in Central Europe. This has been a crazy week for me because this is the end of semester hell. Next week last week, before going on the road trip, I had my exam. Then we had the exam of around 130 students, or 20, 30 students. And I got my grading done on Friday, Saturday, for those things. And I have another test coming this next Thursday, around 20 students for Introduction to Politics. We finished that up last Thursday, not this Thursday, but the previous Thursday. I have to kind of think about, I have about, 9 episodes or 9 recordings of it that I have put up. I uploaded it, but I have not made public, and I have to do some thinking about how I'm going to make them public. Honestly, I haven't done any recording on the Prince since the last time I did it. I have enough recordings for at least until next week. I think I'll get some recording done probably on Monday, Sunday and Monday, given how the schedule of things looking like. Then I have in July, I have about 22 groups of essays, so about 20 each, so about 40 of them to do. So busy. To grade, in other words, for my American Constitution course. They're doing that, and then what else? That's the busy work. I have to finish my essay on the things that come before the constitutionalism by mid-July. I promised. I kind of promised them. I thought it was unreasonable for them to ask me. Only getting it, presenting, only having less than a month to write it. I got about, maybe about 8. I re-edited what I had. I transcribed my lecture that's on the web, but not on the web. It's not here. It's on my Google Drive. I haven't posted it here yet because just I don't know how to do the card. I have to sit down here and write the card, and it's kind of like I transcribed it. I took notes. I reorganized it. I kind of edited it, the transcription. I added some stuff, expanded some stuff, and I think I have 13 pages, 14 pages, and I think that's, oh my God, I need 10 more pages. Oh no. So I don't know if I'm going to get it done, honestly, to be honest, people. And I've started taking notes and things from my political anthropology paper due in September, which I hope to get done. I have a bit of text that I've written that I'm going to reuse that I've not used published anywhere yet. So about 10 pages, 10, 15 pages. So I think I can take my outline, add my stuff here, and this continue and get something done in July and August. If nothing really screws me up. The Machiavelli, I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to finish that off, and I don't know what I'm doing next, honestly. So therefore, that's that. That's what I'm doing. I'm still teaching in my. Sorry for the background noise. Cars are outside. What else to do? I don't know. I'm going to be doing some my American course. I'm finishing up on international law. I have that until September, end of August, and hopefully they'll give me a new class so I can pay my American bills off. But that's it. I don't know what my next thing and for the next. I think I will just use. I'll post some of the stuff I did for my American Constitution course. I'll just post that up after that and because I think that'd be might just give me some time for the August to kind of get organized. August and September, and then I have some time to think of what I'm going to do next. So I would like to do something on Udemy ethics because that seems interesting. People have suggested some things, and I have lots of things to do. And I'm going to be taking a break in my discussion group. Also, I think we're going to take an August break. My August group, my American the book group I'm in. I think we're going to start doing Shakespeare after that. You can tell by my voice; it's kind of hoarse, and yes, it's hoarse. But we'll see. We'll see. This is sinus based. So what about things? Okay, now last week we had the non live stream, and I think Mr. Greenglass posted something about talking about Hunter Biden, about what I said about Hunter Biden and the problem of what I said about there and how him being charged with the gun charge is kind of a problematic thing. But apparently, I think the June 7th posting, the earlier discussion thing, what's his name? James or Mr. Corliss by his handle. James posted some things saying that he responded to my comments about BAP, talking about, and particularly my referencing the Sybil review at Political Science Reviewer. He goes, the Chevrolet review of selective breeding is good. Sybil's criticism of BAP's account of the relative influence of breeding versus culture resembles critiques I've seen of the apparent biological radicals of the Third Reich. The claim begins sounding very hereditarian, but they're qualified by recognizing political, cultural, and historic influences. Even if his approach to Plato is in somehow way related to that of Gunter and the other 30s authors, I find but comes across more as an elitist, aristocratic type of liberal. He never seems to really promote nationalism or socialism or anything like that, nationalism or socialism. Or on a related topic, I noticed that Eric Kaufman has a new book coming up on the sacralization of race and anti-racism in the U.S. in the 1960s, and how this proved to be the foundation of the current identity politics movement. This sounds like it would be interesting. There's also been some, talking about the European elections, especially in France and Italy. I'm not surprised about France. This has been building up for some time, France. Okay, and that was his thing. And he said, so he left the comment on just like hidden. I mentioned Kaufman's book. Now, I've tried getting Kaufman's book in Europe. It's not yet available in Europe. I can buy it. I bought a copy by Amazon US, but it won't be here till like a week or so, 2 weeks or so. So I have to look at it. To be honest with you, I think Kaufman is just going to be another book of the sort that's already been done. I mean, Christopher Caldwell's book about the influence of the post-60 the civil rights laws of 1965, 64, 65, and it's and the age of entitlement that it produced. That was published by a couple years ago by I think Encounter. I'm not sure. It's still a classic book, and I think Caldwell is very much on the mark about the origins of what we consider social justice. Then there has been Josh Mitchell's thing published again by Encounter about 2 or 3 years ago, American Awakening, which talked about woke being a kind of religious identity of race and ethnicity, but it's a quasi-religious thing, but it is taking from kind of an American Puritanist thing, but secularizing it and turning it into something even, a kind of pagan, a Puritanism without forgiveness, right? Mitchell does a very good job explaining this kind of Gnostic ideology, a political theology that is called what is wokeism in that sense. And then last but not least, I would like to mention on this would be Josh, I think Carl. It says Carl. Joe. Just no Carl. Okay, hold on. Yeah, The Unprotected Class by Jeremy Call, which was published this April. The Unprotected Class: How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. I think, okay, this is whereas what's his name? Kaufman's new book, The Third Awakening, I think what this is basically taking the third wave theory of Fukuyama, but Huntington's third wave of democracy, Huntington's classic argument in the late 1990s, early thousands of the third wave of democracy, which happened in the 1990s, and applying it now to this left, the third awakening. So therefore, you see the first left is maybe I would like to see the argument that this is the third progressivist leftist, the counter leftist of the 60s, and then this new one. So there's like this. I want to see the argument. Is he saying French Revolution, Soviet, and this, or is he saying it within the context of the progressives, then the 60s, and then now, right? I haven't looked at Kaufman. Kaufman is a Canadian, born in Canadian, a political scientist who teaches in, at I think, a British university still. I think, where is he? Where is he? I don't remember. Where is he now? I think he's still at Birkbeck College, Birkbeck College, University of London. His White Shift was a very interesting book. Now, I have not been able to get, I've read White Shift and I have it. I have criticisms of it. Many of my friends who do sociobiology had criticisms of it also, because it is a civil nationalist account. But I think a one that echoes what was something like what Bernard Yack made the argument. Bernard Yack, in his book on 2002 Cambridge book on nationalism, makes the case that this divide between civic and ethnic nationalism is a false dichotomy, because even though civic nationalisms, because of intermarriage and marriage and activities of this thing, ended up producing a similar outcome as ethnic nationalism. Okay, because there is a biological construct that emerges over time, and an identity. Now, the book I really wanted to get from that Kaufman produced, it was part of his political demography, but it's just too expensive. What is it? I looked at it and it's like, my God. No, the U.S. version is $32, but the online version that I saw, if I tried ordering it from the U.S., it's Kaufman. It's got Jack Gladstone, Kaufman, and Monica Toff. Political dynamics, how population changes are reshaping international security and national politics. Now, this is, to be honest with you, this is 2011. 2011, Oxford University. And I tried, ordering a copy. It can't be shipped. I can't order it through. Can't order it through the UK system. So Kaufman is a very interesting fellow in SS. Kaufman has been kind of very active. He spoke at national conservatism in Britain. I think the British one, not the Brussels one. I didn't see him at Brussels. He and another political scientist, okay. If you look at Kaufman's earlier work, he's always concerned about self-nationalism and the Orange Order and things like this. I mean, he's not someone who is not written on things. I don't want to get this. I don't want to get it completely wrong. He's the rise of the Anglo-Americanism in 2004, the Orange Order, about that, unionism and Orangeism, 2007. Therefore, the Irish is concerned. He was very much concerned with the nature of religious civic identity problems. He himself is a very complex, multi-ethnic person. He was, born in Hong Kong originally, raised in Vancouver, but he's half Jewish, half quarter Chinese, 1/4 Costa Rican. His father is of Jewish descent and grandfather of secularists from Czech Republic, right? His mother, and so therefore he's went to Catholic school for some time. So he's a very interesting person, but he sees himself within the context of Canadian identity and an English identity in that sense. And he then went to school. You could say he's a centrist, but he became in 2020, he became an adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute, the Conservative Institute. Now, in 23, he resigned from Barefoot College. Okay, and now he's got to join. And after 2 decades, in his post, he joined the University of Buckingham. So he moved to Buckingham. Okay, I didn't know that. That's something to understand. He left Barefoot and then went to Buckingham. His specialization is political demography. It's always been the case. Religious demography as well. He followed the aspects of that. He published many things of this. His The Rise and Fall of Anglo-Americanism, that's 2004 book, Harvard. Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth, 2010, right? Demography, the Religious Demography, 2010. His White Shift, 2018. But his Orangism book is 2007, the contemporary, the Orange Order, Contemporary Northern Irish History, 2007, and his another book, Unionism and Orangism in Northern Ireland since 1945, Decline of the Loyal Family, and in other words, this idea of the decline of the English identity or the pro-royalist identity among the Irish Unionists. He's co-authored books, like he said, The Political Demography, which is how population changes, with Jack Goldstone. He Rethinking Ethnicity, Minority Groups and Dominant Minorities, 2004, Routledge. And Nationalism and Conflict Management with Robert Schlosser and Eric Woods in 2012 by Routledge. So, I mean, he is a traditional political scientist. He's not, I wouldn't call him a conservative hack or something like this. He emerges out of this kind of Canadian English conservatism, not in conservatism. He's not. He's a political scientist in traditional mode, structuralist in that sense. He's concerned with demography, so that gets him in trouble with the identity politicians. Okay, I think this is the thing, because he takes demography seriously, and that's a no topic among the politically correct and the woke. And I'd like to see his book, what he does in his book. It'd be interesting in that sense. So James, thank you for mentioning this. I spent some time talking about Kaufman. I think he is an interesting fellow to people, political scientists, to look at. His white shift was a very interesting argument. I think it mixes. He is not, like I say, he's on the verge. He's not a pure civic nationalist, although he's more civic nationalist than ethno-nationalist. But the way he understands demographics and understands demographics in terms of marriage and long-term identity, he basically follows in the footsteps of Bernard Yack, who, if you know, Yack is a political theorist, and who's what is Yack's book? I forget. It's Bernard Yack's book. I mean, of course, there's his famous one, Longing for Total Revolution from 1986, and his Problems of Political Animal on Aristotle, which is in his Fetish of Nationalism. But the book that's famous for is, okay, I gotta turn off the phone for a second, so I apologize. Certain person's calling, and I don't want to answer. People are not away, and they always get you to do things. Yack's Nationalism and Moral Psychology of Community, right? So Yack, and I said what Yack does here. Yack kind of says that there's the distinction between civic nationalism and ethnic nationalism really ultimately collapses, because once you have intergenerational identity, a civic nationalist construct becomes ethnic over time. Okay, so once you have marriage, populations, intermarriage, and identity, that just becomes, this distinction between ethnic. I think Yack is totally correct here, that ultimately the distinction between ethnic and civic nationalism kind of collapses. The only way it doesn't collapse is there's ethnic nationalism tends to be more closed, whereas civic nationalism tends to be more open to newcomers. The question is, maybe some ethnic nationals are open to a thing, but there's a requirement for a greater, a stronger identification with the ethnic identity, whereas a civic nationalism, what defines the ethnicity is wholly political. Okay, so that is there is a difference to how the ethnicity or the entity emerges, right? The nation emerges. One is political, one is pure ethnicity, but there's relative opennesses to each of these two types. But I think Yak makes the very good argument. I think a convincing argument that ethnic nationalism, civic nationalism, the division between this is overstated because at the operation of intergenerationality, they operate ultimately the same way. The difference may be a relative openness to inclusion, right? And that is the point of what's so interesting about Eric Kaufman's White Shift, is that he's making the argument that what the meaning of white is evolves. And there is a good case to this because if you look at 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, let's say back in the middle 19th century, Irish and Catholics weren't considered really white. Okay, they weren't considered part of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant elite, right? This Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture. WASP elite. Now, this WASP elite was the dominant in the Catholic elite. As long as you can make the argument that Catholics and blacks were two competing minorities in the American context. That only at the turn of the 20th century, by 1930s, 40s, and 50s, do the Irish overtake the blacks and become white in that sense. We have to remember that all to the 19th century yes, we had segregation in terms of black segregation in the South and maybe parts of the West, with black universities, black schools, black things like this. Like you had separate but equal after Plessy versus Ferguson, nationalizing the Southern what's basically a Southern a pattern of segregation. But it required that if you're going to have any state subsidization of schools or things like that, you had to give them. So you had to create, in other words, there was segregation that was a separate. But you saw the same thing happening with Catholics in America, and from the 1840s onwards, with their parochial schools, the Catholic universities and colleges. You had Catholic America had its own culture, its own papers, its ghettos. The major cities. In other words, there was like a twofold segregation that really kind of ends for the Catholics in the 1940s, 40s and 50s, that they all of a sudden kind of integrate into with particularly the moment of the Kennedy presidency. You can say that is the moment where the distinction kind of really completely blurs. But the Second World War kind of blurred it as well. So, we have this changing, and then the 1960s and 70s, you had the kind of the civil rights movement led to the attempt to overcome the black-white thing. But the thing about this is white. If we're going to talk about what Anglo-Saxon WASP culture became white. And I think this is this is the kind of argument, and he's now saying in White Shift, Kaufman is saying that, well, Hispanics are going to be increasing. The Hispanics who embrace European identity, the Hispanics in America who don't really emphasize their Hispanic culture, adopt white culture, adopt Anglo-Saxon values and their behavior, language. They adopt the English language. They conform to English behavior. They accept the middle class. We say act white, right? As the culture studies people say that they adopt this behavior, then adopt to this, and therefore this is a cult. They're adopting this Anglo-American European identity of culture, values, norms, behaviors, and it's associating with it. And they may keep some aspects. They keep the name, but it may keep their attinement to the Catholic religion, so they may be Catholic still. But their culture, their habits, and their things will be increasingly conformity to the establishment middle class, right? The working upper middle class, right? The upper middle and middle classes, right? This perception. The same thing, the same trajectory that you can talk about with regarding to the Irish and other ethnicities like this. So the Hispanics are, in one sense, following the trajectory of, the Italian. First, there was the Irish, then the Italians and the Portuguese, and the Italians, Portuguese, and now the Hispanics, not Spanish, but Hispanics from Latin America. This is normalizing in this section of becoming white, right? This is the white shift. And the idea of some aspects of Asian too, because this is that aspect in because of his own experience being part Asian. Kaufman brings the Asian connection to how the Asians are intermarrying, and they intermarry, and therefore there is this kind of connections of this, and their identity is now see themselves as white American European, right? This which adopts the values and identity. So White Shift is a very interesting book. Now, if Kaufman is taking the same approach, the kind of historic, now he's using kind of the metaphor of the third wave, which is clearly Huntington in that sense. Third wave of democracy, because remember, the first wave was the French Revolution, the second wave was World War II, and the third wave is post-Cold War, right? This is Huntington's famous classic argumentation of the third wave. And he's arguing about terms of revolutionary things. This would be very interesting to look at. So therefore, the first one would be, you would say, the French, two possible models. One would be international. The first radicalization is the radicalization that happened after the French Revolution. The second was the Bolshevik communist radicalization. And the third one is the 1960s Cold War, post-end Cold War radicalization of the left, this postmodernist radicalization. That's one way. You can wholly Americanize it. That is progressivism, the rise of 19th century progressivism, early 20th century progressivism, then the 1960s, and then the postmodern radicals of the late 90s, early thousands, right? So I really don't know. I'm just kind of just talking about these things, and I thought it'd be good to hit on it. So when I get the book, and I'm probably getting it next week sometime, a week after sometime, I will look into it and comment on it, maybe talk about it in a live stream. But no, it's not the only thing he talked about, James talked about. He listened to a long interview with David Engels, the Belgian classicist, who's now back in France, apparently. He was a teaching point. I didn't know that. He was probably at Erasmus or something, or some program someplace. I don't know where he was. He says, apart from the Roman Republic and the Skidluids, his area of interest is Spengler. So therefore, 2000, he published a book, the decline, right, comparing the current situation in the EU to the later Roman Republic in light of the Spengler approach to that, the collapse of this. In other words, now he's asking me, I'm wondering if you discussed Spengler in the past. I think Spengler is interesting, but I'm uncertain about his predictive power and the decline model. Now, my problem with Spengler is Spengler, to me, is engaged in the same kind of spiritualism approach. In other words, I've always problem with Spengler is that I think he's right in one sense. Spengler talks about the West being a culture that has the contradictory side, this double-sided aspect. But at the same time, everything is about, and therefore there's the decline of culture. There's a rise of a civilization that's demonic. There's a cycle of all civilizations are going to have this thing. But there was something unique about the West that allowed it to kind of achieve its longevity, was its self-critical aspect. The problem, but the question then is what caused it. Now Spengler doesn't really address this. He thinks this is maybe a pure demise, but other people like Pierre Minette and Rene Brague argue, following Pierre Minette, that argues that no, this is maybe it's the uniqueness of the West was the two sides. In other words, that it had not a schizophrenia, but it had two opposing claims: religion, the rational claims of Athens, the Athens and Jerusalem argument, the Athens and Jerusalem one, and therefore, the Athens has its own ontology. They differ not only in terms of the source of authority, but also in terms of the ontology. The ontology of Jerusalem is a completely different ontology than the ontology advanced by an Athenian, the pagan mentality. In other words, the Athenian, the pagan gods are different from the gods of the Bible, of the monotheistic religions the Jews, Christians, and Islam. I really don't want to get into a big point about this, but the problem with pardon, a little bit of a gas attack. The problem with Spengler, to me, has always been that Spengler really is not looking at this from a point of view historical, biological, but understands it spiritually. That's very much in the kind of, there's almost kind of a will to power construction in it, echoing, I think, in a way, as much romantic as someone like following Carlyle and Gang. In essence, Carlyle's perception of this idea of spirit and spirit identity. There's a spiritualism and cultural aspect in this that is tied to spirit and will. That I'm my Aristotelian Darwinist side, Aristotelian Montesquieuan and Darwinist side, is kind of looking at it very skeptical. I look at this and say, I don't think there's a systematic argument for decline. I think it's just the lack of spirit. In other words, that the Spenglerian position is the contradiction within the culture, reaches a highlight, and it no longer believes in itself. And as it no longer believes in itself, it will be overpowered by competing cultures. Now, this is at odds with the argument coming from Hegel, who argued that the inevitable, from pre-Greek, Greek, Roman, German, right? This is this evolutionary progression of development of culture and identity, following the will of mind, spirit, right? And the dialect, the master-slave dialectic, the logic of the master-slave dialectic, reaching the apogee of all being free, reaching the end of history, the end of the dialectic of the contest between freedom and slavery, operationalized in the context of historical development and epochs. Look at philosophies of Hegel's philosophy of history in that sense, and that there's kind of a projection of progression towards a absolute moment of where there's no more, there's perfection of culture and there's no beyond it. End of history, end of this. Whereas Spengler, being kind of it's more Nietzschean influence, arguing that there's no perfection, there's only culture demise, and that there's this cycle of culture, and that what European culture did was there was a kind of, this European culture had a high, went beyond the tradition of culture and was strong, were able to overcome them. But then the very nature of that culture is leading to its own collapse. In other words, the doubt, the self-inquiry, the self-doubt in itself, that it turned upon itself. The kind of rationalistic critique of others turned on itself, and once it turned on itself, it deconstructed it. It kind of demolished it, and leads to its demise. In that sense, leads to its weakness against others who don't have the doubt. That is the kind of Spengelian view, like Faustus, right? For the metaphor of Faust, right? That once they hit the peak of the end, it collapses, right? Again, it's will. The Faustian thing is a will construction. It's the belief in the act of the will and the willing agency. And again, this is spiritual. This is understood within a spiritual context. And to me, this is kind of hokum. Um, um, I think you can argue. They can argue for the problem of critique and belief in terms of the identity of a people, and this becomes destroyed when they become so deracinated because they've lost their identity, lost their beliefs. Okay, I understand that, but the argument that this is a process of will by itself, is there such thing as collective will in this sense? This leads us to the problems of the nonsense of Hobbes and Locke, right? This idea of a collective will, like a willing entity, that it is a collective will. Is there such thing as a collective will? Is there a will outside of us? This leads us to the realm of the divine. This leads us to theology. Once we understand that there's an external will motivating and driving things, either collectively or kind of a collective will, collective agency, and therefore this human-made gods in the Hobbesian, Descartesian sense, or an external force of will that embodies a thing. We're dealing with spirits in a certain level, and therefore this is theology. And I think this may have been one of the benefits of Christianity. Is what Christianity did was it kind of led us to, Christianity forced a skepticism of anything but Christianity. In other words, anything but the Christian, this God. All the other gods aren't really gods. All these other things is superstition. It's nonsense. In other words, in many ways, the rationalist scientific world and its doubt and its skepticism towards mysticism and supernatural is a byproduct of the fact that the attitude Christianity had, Judaism and Christianity had towards the other gods, or people who believed in the other gods, or people who believed in magic or things like that. Okay, so that is a kind of understanding that we need to take into consideration. My problem with this is that I look at people like Spengler, and they're talking about will and talking about depersonalized will in this sense, and as I don't buy Hobbes and Locke, or Hobbes' account of will, and I'm suspicious, therefore, of Hegel's and Kant's, what Hegel and Kant does with will later. I am therefore as much dubious of what Spengler ends up saying about these things. So, is to what degree Spengler is just a child of the modernist world in that sense, accepts, even though he's critiquing aspects of modern liberalism, he just is. In other words, he's critiquing the current decline of his contemporary decline, or the crisis that he sees liberalism facing, in light of the model that he inherited in certain constructual systems that he inherited. So, and this leads us to leads us to like something of academic agents, the prophets of doom. This is the same thing. Once you get into the spiritualism, the folk spiritualism of mysticism of the will, and this identity of the spirit, that you get because of this, Spengler and et al., Carlyle and gangs. It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole, but it's particularly a rabbit hole for those who don't believe, okay, who aren't believers. I think this is why we live in a time where real Christianity has been Gnosticized, destroyed, perverted by progressive liberalism, and corrupted into a state where it looks like more like a horror, the horror of Babylon, than the Church of Christ. So it's you look at it, and it's most people aren't, they're not. Why should you join? Why would you want to go? Why do I want to go to a thing that sounds no different? Why do I want to go to a religion, an organization or church that sounds no different than the society that it's supposed to be trying to improve? And I think that is the problem in this sense. And therefore, those who look towards this longing for spirit, they long for a kind of spiritual quest. And what they turn to is, now, C.S. Lewis is right. Paganism is an interesting thing, but this is not an authentic paganism. This is just hucksters of, the leftover hucksters of the 19th century and early 20th century. These false spirits, in that sense, these false claims to the holy and the divine. And I think that's the problem of Spengler. Spengler's not pushing. I don't think Spengler is actually pushing towards something, a belief or a thing. He's, I think, ultimately a pessimist in that he sees destruction, he sees this decline, and he thinks, okay, we're just going to have to go through another cycle. Or just at the end peak of that time. I don't think Spengler has a position of renewal in that sense. And I don't know what renewal would be in a Spenglerian sense, or is renewal possible with a Spengelian situation once the contradiction has been relieved and that no one believes what they need to believe in order to believe. Okay. It's that wonderful line in Prince, right? How do you make those who not believe, right? I want to stop here. I'm not going to go further today. I'm kind of, my voice is dying out, and there's not many people here, and I don't really see any much to go further, and I didn't plan to go anything. I might one day do a discussion on Italian realism a little bit. I took some notes recently, and I thought about it, and I think it'd be a good idea to talking about Italian realism. But I'll let you guys go, and hopefully that you will. Hopefully, we'll see each other soon next week. Take care. Okay, but before I go, hit the thumbs up. Help the channel because it's good to do that. I see 2 people watching us. Hope that you will consider hitting the thumbs up. Those of you who come later and watching it, hit thumbs up. Please put some comments on it about what you'd like to see me cover or address or themes of issues. I'll hit on. Another thing is that you want to follow me on social media. The social media links below. My academic social media links below that. And you want to help me and subscribe to our Patreon. The links to the URLs to subscribe to our Patreon. Or to want to buy one of my books, you can buy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or any one of those, or maybe even the publishers themselves. The books are below. The list of the books currently available are below. Well, that's it. It's it for the week. I think I'm kind of like that. My voice is out, and I'm sitting on a kind of wobbly stool. And I'm kind of a little tired, and I need to call back people because people called. Well, take care, and I will see you guys next week. Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend, too.